who were both recruited by Matt Painter. So we'll see what happens, and certainly a lot of respect for them. But I tell you what, I'm still rooting for Virginia. Virginia in most of my brackets I've got going all the way, and one of my brackets I got them winning in. Let's talk about yesterday's action. LSU and Michigan State, again, up in your neck of the woods, number 2 Michigan State. And Tom Izzo comes back and says, yeah, we still got this. We're still in control. Didn't get ate up by some Tigers. Mr. Sparty moves on.
That game, I think, was decided in the first flurry there when Michigan State got up on an 8-0 lead and LSU did not have an answer. I had a feeling LSU was going to be in big trouble because that seemed like what happened in every one of their losses this season, Tom. They got to a slow start and they lost interest. And I think that's the thing with some of these young teams that you got to be careful about. And I think not having Will Wade as the coach on the sidelines hurt that. And I think allowed that to happen. But ultimately, I think right now you got to come out strong. And there are certain teams where it is absolutely paramount that you come out and you get off to a fast start. LSU did not do that last night, and that ultimately hurt them. Now, granted, they did make a decent comeback, but at that point you had to have a feeling that Izzo, with the dramas they've had in some of the games already in this tournament, he wasn't going to let them fall on their face again.
Well, you're absolutely right. The Spartans started the game out at 8-0 run and never really looked back. And we're leading to the wire. LSU went on an 8-0 run of their own on the start of the second. But there again, LSU was underdone. Tremont Waters was the only Tiger that was to score more than 11 points, and the sophomore poured in 23 points. Javon Smart, freshman guard, played 25 minutes, but failed to score on 6 attempts. Again, Michigan State racked up 22 assists, shot 40.6% from behind the arc, and Cassius Winston 17 points as well. So, yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Michigan State said, we got this. We're moving on. Here was an exciting game to me, the most exciting game to watch last night, and that was Auburn and North Carolina. North Carolina, number 1, falls to Bruce Pearl. Again, another Indiana connection. He used to coach down there at USI. And let's take a moment and tip our hats to USI. They almost did it in the D2. But, my goodness, it didn't happen. But, hey.
They lost in the semifinals on Thursday.
Right. But Bruce Pearl used to coach down there. There's the 365-degree connection. Bruce Pearl is going to be highly touted and highly sought after. Don't know if he'll stay with Auburn, but his focus right now is with Auburn, and he proved that last night against the Tar Heels.
Well, obviously, we don't know the extent of the FBI investigation. Obviously, Chuck Person was one person tied. If Bruce Pearl, who's not had a squeaky clean record, he had the issues with Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and also Tennessee. If he comes out squeaky clean, he should be fine here and should be here a while. I just got to say, though, considering it's Charles Barkley's thing, I just don't want to see a last-second shot and him jumping up and down on the set like Villanova when Chris Jenkins hit that shot. Because you could just see it happening if they get all the way to the Final Four or something, where he starts going bonkers. I respect Auburn for getting this far because this is a program that has not done this since, I think, Chris Porter and Cliff Ellis was the head coach, I believe.
You probably are right on that. You're much better on the stats than I am.
Chris something. I don't remember his last name. I know it was the guy that had the big hair. I don't remember his last name, though.
The big hair. That could explain a lot. But, hey, the Tar Heels were the first number 1 seed to fall last night, and I thought that was a really exciting game there in Kansas City. It's just the second time that Auburn will appear in the Elite Eight. So, I tell you what, if you got Auburn, which I do in a couple brackets, I hate to say,
by the way, did their player that they mentioned, I think that Kazir Hill, did he play last night?
I think so.
Okay, yeah, because he was battling the flu. There was questions of whether or not he was going to play or not, and I wonder.
Isn't that the other kid with big hair?
Yeah, they mentioned that he might not play because he had a bad case of the flu. Of course, you think of the flu, you think of Michael Jordan's super play in the 97 NBA Finals where he scored like 40 points against the Jazz and almost secured that series for them with that performance. Unfortunately, I guess Kazir Hill did not have the performance I thought he was going to have, because sometimes when you are sick as a basketball player or as any kind of athlete, the pressure goes away and that's all you focus on. You end up playing better because of it. But, well, maybe it didn't work out tonight or last night for UNC.
Well, I'll tell you what, we had another 2-3 matchup last night as well, and that's the Wildcats, Calipari in the UK against Houston. I mean, Houston kind of started out all right. They had a 3-point lead with a minute 16 to play. It just wasn't enough. And the Kentucky Wildcats said, we got this in Calipari, and the Wildcats do what Wildcats do last night, and that is play well in the tournament.
If not for Zion Williamson and, the superstars that Coach K has at Duke, I thought Kentucky was the team that's going to win this title. If you wipe Duke, if Duke had gotten eliminated by Taco Fall and UCF, and let's go back to that game if you have time, that was a game I think that UCF had multiple chances to put Duke away, and they just could not do it and just didn't have the answer to be able to pull it off. And Zion Williamson just had enough to win that game. And I actually thought, considering that performance, that raised Houston's profile, that they would give Kentucky a run. But Kentucky, I think, just much too strong. They just have much too much firepower to deal with. I got to say, with Kentucky, considering how many new players they have into their team pretty much every year because of the one-and-done situations with the NBA, you look at that situation and the fact that they got to such a good start this year, that ultimately makes you have to think that they're going to be a contender when we get to tournament time. And I just still think if somehow Duke stubs their toe, Kentucky, even though they are a 2-seed, I think becomes the favorite to win the NCAA tournament at this point.
Wow. I tell you what, that's going to be huge. And I know a lot of people have them going, but I'm not one of those people that have them in the championship game. I am one of those people that have them in the Final Four, so we'll see what happens. Last night, Duke still manages to hang on barely against Virginia Tech Hokies. The Duke Blue Devils keep moving on, as you mentioned. Zion is a beast, but Duke is, by all accounts, a disappointment this year.
I wouldn't go that far. Now, granted, with that, Duke barely survived against Virginia Tech. Not only did they not have Zion Williamson, but also Virginia Tech was without their top scorer. I don't think that made any difference in that game. I don't think it made any difference now. It's just, I don't know if Duke is just underestimating their opponents or what the case is, but we saw even with the game against North Dakota State, they came out flat in that game. It's just they have just enough firepower to be able to win. Now, granted, I compare that to, just jumping out of a play and trying to build the parachute and make it work before you smash on the ground. I don't know if that's necessarily going to get them all the way to the championship game. I think you would think Coach K would say, hey, you need to come out and get out to a fast start and start trying to put these teams away. But you look at who is left, I certainly think based on the opening that Michigan State gave to LSU, I think if you look at that matchup, if Duke comes out flat in that game and Michigan State goes out to a fast start, Cassius Winston, et cetera, it's going to be a very hard sell for me that Duke finds a way to win this game on Sunday.
Doesn't look like we're going to have a Cinderella this year. Not at all. Not anywhere close. But let's look at kind of the journey of what has happened over the games. And I think if we could say, if we want to look at
and there's a reason for that, Tom. After what happened last year with all the upsets, I think a lot of these coaches, a lot of these players started to realize, hey, we are not invulnerable in these first-round matchups. I think we saw that. Granted, that's why not many of these first-round matchups ended up being close. I think teams, for once, the top seeds, took these lower games like they were a second, third, or fourth-round game and played that way. Now, granted that some of them came out flat. I mean, we had 2-1s trailing 16s at the half, but they eventually got their act together. But I think ultimately players and I think coaches, I think that's why Tom Izzo got his team against Bradley. They realized you come out flat even in any round of this tournament, considering how the field has equalized itself, you can lose. And I think that's the thing that got into heads all across the board. So actually, if you look at last year with all the upsets, I think for the teams that were, the double-digit seeds, that actually proved to be a detriment this year than a help, because I think you saw these teams, the top seeds, did their homework and decided, okay, we're not going to come out flat and just, cruise in these first-rounders because we might actually lose them. And I think that's what you saw this year, and that's why these double-digit seeds were not as successful as they have been in years past.
Well, no, absolutely. We were kind of hoping that we would see some Cinderella action. Certainly, we thought at UCF, we thought St. Mary's, we thought Washington might be somebody that could make some noise. We actually even talked a little bit. Irvine definitely was one. We talked about a little bit about Colgate, how strong they were, how that could have happened. But you're right, UC Irvine was probably the one that we predicted the most, outside of maybe St. Mary's, that we predicted the most that would be our Cinderella. But we don't see it this year. So I guess if we have to, for conversation purposes, but it's not even really a real thing. It's kind of a fake thing because they're not really a Cinderella team. But if we want to look at if we want to put a Cinderella title, if we want to say that, if we want to use those words, Purdue would be that team.
Well, a lot of people would say Auburn, but I think Auburn, based on the toughness of that SEC conference, got a raw deal with that 5 seed. And I think you're seeing that now with, LSU getting to the Sweet 16, Kentucky getting there, Tennessee. I think you could make a case, and I'm sure Charles Barkley would probably agree with me. Granted, I don't see eye to eye with him anyway, but I think a lot of those SEC teams did get underseeded in the draw, and I think you're starting to see that now, especially with a team like Auburn, as easily as they put away a team that many thought could win the tournament in North Carolina.
Well, let's break it down by the numbers. We're going to have a Final Four by the end of the weekend. By the end of tomorrow, we're going to have a Final Four in Minneapolis. So we're going to start, and we're going to break it down by the numbers. Our first game of the day today is tonight at 6 o'clock, and that's Texas Tech at Gonzaga. Bulldogs, certainly a lot of people have Gonzaga in their brackets going all the way. I certainly have them going deep as well. And we talked a little bit about this earlier, but let's break it down by the numbers. Number 3, Texas Tech against number 1, Gonzaga Bulldogs.
Well, Texas Tech, obviously, their defense is tough to get through. So I think guys like Norvell, et cetera, are going to have to get their act together and bust in the lane and get some points inside, because Michigan couldn't do it earlier. That really hurt their chances early on. I mean, they couldn't even get the ball to Teskey, their big guy inside, in the first, 10 minutes of the game. They only had like 6 points or something. So I think if they get bust inside, they have a very good chance to win. But Texas Tech, they could get their act together as well, because they also came out flat against in the Michigan game. That could be a good one. But like I said, I think of the 1 seeds that are left, Gonzaga is still the most vulnerable, in my opinion. And I think Texas Tech finds a way to win this game. And like I had them predicted to go to the Final Four, I think they will pull that off and get there.
Well, we seem to all during the year, we always seem to forget to talk about Gonzaga. We never really talk about them. They're out on the West Coast. They're in California. We never talk about it. But then March, here they are. Every single year, here they are. We say every single year. That's kind of a bit of an embellishment. But they certainly are there enough for us to continue to talk about the Gonzaga Bulldogs. What is it about Gonzaga that we don't hear about them until March?
Weak conference. I mean, if there were teams in the West Coast Conference that were strong, I mean, St. Mary's was not a strong team this year. I mean, BYU was off. A lot of people said San Francisco was a team to look at. I saw them play it. I was not impressed. And then you look further down the list, Portland's nothing too spectacular. Loyola Marymount is long past the days of Bo Kimball, Hank Gathers. There just is not a lot there that says strong conference. And granted, Gonzaga plays strong teams in non-conference, but that's, 3 months before the tournament. And a lot of things can change in 3 months. So it's hard for me, and I'm sure a lot of experts, to put the money behind a team that really does not get a strong challenge in that 3-month window between the end of the non-conference season and the start of the NCAA tournament.
Well, absolutely. And so we'll see what happens. Texas Tech, Gonzaga might be who gets the first ticket